This is where there's a tension between how we pursue the same goals. Like as we've just established, we have many of the same goals. But insofar as you make religion look palatable, insofar as you suggest to your audience that they can have their religious cake and eat it too. They can have their reason, they can have their respect for science, they can have a 21st century worldview, but they can also hold on to everything they love in Christianity or fear to lose. And it's undoubtedly mostly Christianity, but whatever, any religion. My concern is that it keeps us shackled to these Iron Age philosophies and these Iron Age conversations where we should be having a 21st century conversation about everything, ethics included.
Okay, so... Okay, but I want to ask you a little bit about your feeling about...
Wait, before you move on, I want to get each of you to clarify something so that we know where we are. So Sam, you said the problem here is that the dogma can't be updated, right? That slavery is with us permanently because it's written into the dogma. But clearly, most of the traditions in which it's written into the Holy Book don't practice slavery, and the people who adhere to these belief systems wouldn't defend slavery. So clearly there is the capacity for an update mechanism.
Well, no, but not really. I mean, they've been forced, they've had it beaten out of them, right? I mean, we fought a civil war in the U.S. to get rid of slavery.
But it was Christians who abolished slavery in England, though.
What was that?
It was Christians who were at the forefront of the movement to abolish slavery in England.
There were Christians on either side of everything. I mean, there's no one else to do the job.
Right, but that's the update mechanism.
Wait a second.
But
it was specifically...
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I just hope that you're doing fine wherever you are today. These are presented Gintox Stories, and I like presenting some thought-provoking videos that are really important to the vast majority of my people who watches my video. Now today's question is, why were Christians slave owners when we have a group of Christians or a group of people who believed to be Christians by then, who played defense by doing away with slavery, right? And history has named it down. We also have a group of Christians who played offense by owning slaves. Yet the Bible itself says that human life is sacred and no one should be treated as subhuman. Remember, the United States has an history of enslaving black people for the longest time, making them work for them for free. And in today's discussion, we are here because we have a lot of scholars, we have a lot of theologians who have come out to discuss about this. Theologians who have tried to look into it by saying that, okay, you guys need to look at Christianity in a different way, right? Because the same Christianity that you're saying that ended slavery, it is the same religion, Christianity, that perpetuated slavery. It's like the person who started an arson is the person who is ending the arson, right? You created the problem and now you're ending the problem by yourself. Does that make you right? That does make you wrong to begin with in the first place. Buckle up for this video as it involves Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson who are going to argue. The question is, why were Christians slave owners? Yet we know Christianity was viewed so sacred, was viewed as a means of putting people into light. Buckle up for this video. These are presented Gintox Stories. I really want to know what you think about this video just at the beginning, and until the end we're gonna meet and talk about this. Let's buckle up for this video. I'll be back, and if you're watching this video for the first time, I'll most definitely ask you to subscribe to the channel, join our membership, and really get to see what it can offer you. Until then, let's get into it.
Christians who were using their Christian belief as a justification for eradicating slavery.
The problem was they were actually on the losing side of a theological argument. And it would be much better, I think you would agree, if one of the 10 commandments had been, don't keep slaves. You know? I mean, there's certainly one we could swap out for that one. And so that way, it would have been much easier for Christians to have fought against slavery. And it's much harder for Muslims, frankly, to fight against it now. The problem is that there's a point I made, I think, in my first book, is that the doors leading out of this kind of fundamentalism don't open from the inside. They get bashed open from the outside. And it's humanism and it's secularism and it's scientific rationality that has exerted such pressure, such winnowing pressure on Christianity, now for multiple centuries, that's why we're not encountering the Christians of the 14th century on a daily basis. I mean, we are essentially encountering Muslims of the 14th century, not only in the Middle East, but in our own societies, in terms of their intuitions about how we should all live, right? I mean, the fact that 0% of UK Muslims think homosexuality is acceptable, right? 0%. I mean, there's almost no question you can come up with where we could poll this society and say, I mean, do you think that a lizard king is living in the Oval Office? You never get a 0% response to any poll question, right? But if you ask Muslims on the streets of London, is homosexuality morally acceptable? Apparently, you can find no one who says it is. That's shocking, and it's not an accident, right? And it would be much easier if the book actually said, you can love anyone you want, and it's not a problem.
It is shocking, but I think there's a reason that you keep finding yourself at Islam, which may be the slowest to update for reasons that may be ancient. But I wanted to.
That is a useful.
Well, I can do it for Christianity. I want to make the point as cleanly and as undistractedly as possible. But yeah, it's true. I have the same kinds of concerns about Christianity or Mormonism or Scientology or anything else. And the point is they're all different. And there's no reason to be, because Islam, to take the case where it's fine, Islam doesn't represent any impediment to stem cell research, right? Because they just don't think that the fertilized ovum is immediately ensouled. It waits 40 days or 80 days or 120 days, depending on what hadith you believe. So it's just that never came up when we were all complaining about how religion, in this case Orthodox Judaism and Christianity in the States, was posing an impediment to embryonic stem cell research.
Okay. Hold on. I wanted to ask you a clarifying question too.
Yeah, sure.
Same level. Would you agree that there are things written into these religious texts that are unambiguously unacceptable viewed through a modern lens, and not because the texts are so complicated that we have misunderstood something, but there are things that are just written in there that we now understand to be wrong?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is that we have to be very careful about equating all the religious texts. And I do actually think that you are careful about that, but that's something we can have a discussion about a little bit later.
I agree with you there.
So because, for a lot of my life, I would say, more interested in the universal truths expressed in religious belief across different cultures. But I've become more and more aware of the important distinctions between the religious cultures, maybe in the last 10 years. So it isn't clear to me that you can just throw all religious dicta in the same bucket. And there's complex reasons for that. So, and one question, which you kind of sent at Sam already, is, do you see a hierarchy of unacceptability between different religious doctrines? I mean, and I would say
yes.
You acted, okay, fine. So, okay, now, but here's an interesting issue. And I think we're starting to zero in on, we've covered what we agree on, a lot of it, but there's another thing.
Answer Brett's question, because I think it was a good one.
Sorry, I answered the first half of it, but the second part is, I think that this is where I'm going to sound like a postmodernist, which I really hate. I would say, sentence by sentence, yes, you're correct. Paragraph by paragraph, perhaps. But here's here's the problem with complicated texts, especially ones that actually constitute narratives. So imagine this. So imagine you're at a movie, and it's a movie with a twist at the end. And so the entire movie is set up to make you think one particular way and to have one set of experiences. But when you put the twist in at the end, it changes the entire structure. And so this is one of the complex problems that actually led to the rise of postmodern interpretations of literature, which is that if you take a complex narrative, there's a very large number of ways of interpreting it, and it isn't self-evident which of those are canonically correct. And we can deal with that horrible issue later, but it's a good objection, and it's true. And what it does is it makes these sorts of things quite complicated, because in the Bible is a series of books, and they had influence on one another, and they were sequenced with a very complex editorial process, and there's actually a developmental narrative that links all the chapters together. And what that means, this is at least, I'm going to speak from the perspective, or in terms of analysis of the Christian Bible, what it means is that you have to read the beginning as if it's also influenced by the end, which is what, by the way, and in case you think that I'm weaseling around here, and I'm not, is that's exactly what you do every time you read any story, any work of fiction. You say, well, you're not claiming that the Bible is a work of fiction. It's like, that's just a cheap objection. That's not my point. My point is that it's a narrative. And everything in a narrative is conditioned by all the rest of the things in the narrative. And it's well known, like if you're a screenwriter, for example, there's an old dictum, I don't remember who generated it, was one of the great Russians, that if there's a rifle lying on a table in the first scene, that it better be used by the end of the second scene, or it shouldn't have been there at all. So there's this coherence.
I'm looking for the rifle in your answer to this question, though,
Yeah,
because I want it
look,
to be used.
My point is that it isn't reasonable to take a single sentence out of a coherent narrative and say that stands on its own, or it's rarely reasonable, because you have to interpret the word in the sentence and the sentence in the paragraph and the paragraph in the chapter and the chapter in the context of the entire book. You have to do that. Now, you could object, and reasonably so, that there are some sentences that are so blatant that you can't use context to paraphrase them, let's say. But I think you also have to give the devil its due. The Christian Bible is a developmental narrative, and the beginning has to be read in light of the end. And is it a fact?
Okay, well,
so what does that do to Moses' laws of war? This is not a narrative. This is instructions about what to do when you invade a foreign land. If you intend to take over that land, you kill everybody, right? There are other rules in there about killing husbands and taking the wives for yourself.
Yeah, the Old Testament's a brutal document.
Absolutely brutal. And so my point would be, I don't know that reading that portion in light of the end, even if you call the end the New Testament, I don't know that it changes Moses' laws of war and their acceptability in
well,
any
hypothetically,
modern
if you
context.
take the New Testament seriously, it does, because it's a document that supersedes it. And I think there's actually technical reasons why
it doesn't
supersedes
supersede it on every point. I mean, this is the problem. Slavery is a very straightforward case, because clearly the Bible thumpers of the South who were defending slavery with reference to the text felt they were on firm ground. And I would invite anyone to read what the New Testament and the Old Testament say about slavery to see that they were on fairly firm ground, that the balance of the honest reading was on the side of clearly we can keep slaves, right? Jesus never envisioned a world without slavery, and he admonished slaves to serve their masters well and to serve their Christian masters especially well.
The English Protestants wouldn't have agreed with that because, like I said, they were at the forefront of the fight against slavery.
Okay,
so
but
I think
they
was
were
a
clearly
range
influenced by something outside the text, and this is, again, you're making this harder than it is, and my concern is why. Right?
Well, I don't think I am, Sam, because I think that the fundamental message in the New Testament, for example, is that
so then you acknowledge that the Old Testament, so Jews are in possession of a book that has some diabolical passages that would be better left out. You're not going to offend me. I'm Jewish.
It's not like look in the Old Testament itself, in the Jewish Bible. There's also the seeds of the same tension. So, for example, there's a tension, and this should be a tension that's of interest to you, because you've stated quite clearly in your book, in the moral landscape, that you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with regards at least to religious phenomenology. You said that, for example, I still consider the world's religions to be mere intellectual ruins maintained at enormous economic and social cost, but now I understood that important psychological truths could be found in the rubble. Well, I'm trying to find the important psychological truths in the rubble.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I just hope that you're doing fine wherever you are today. Now, again, talking about this gentleman's argument in regards to the question at hand, you could look at these philosophically. Ask yourself this philosophical question. Yes, philosophically. Ask yourself this question. Why did people who claimed to be close to God himself doesn't support slavery? Slavery simply means that looking at other human beings as subhumans and subjugating them to conditions, making them work for free, owning them, which simply goes back to seeing them as subhumans, something like a dog or something like a donkey that you could just use for your own benefit, and after using it you could just leave it anywhere you want, right? So Jordan Peterson comes up with an argument. Sam Harris also comes up with an argument. And at the end of the day, we are not going to be saying who will win, but we are yet to find the truth. Now, there is something that I want to address. This debate touches on philosophical questions about the sources of morality and the role of religion in historical atrocities. Critics of Harris that his perspective oversimplifies the role of religion and ignores how interpretation of religious texts has evolved over time, aligned with the progressive values. On the other hand, Peterson's symbolic interpretations of the Bible as a critique for being overly vague and insufficient addressing the real-world consequences of religious doctrines. Now, I might go to talk about the point of argument between the two brothers. Sam Harris argues that views the Bible and other religious texts as flawed moral guides. He points out that the Bible condones practices like slavery, which modern society universally condemns. Right? Harris argued that that an omniscient, benevolent God could have provided clear moral guidance against slavery, yet the Bible fails to do so. This, he believes, undermines the claim that religious texts are divinely inspired. Harris often emphasizes how moral progress, such as the abolition of slavery, arose from secular humanist principles rather than religious mandates. Because talking about secular humanist principles, because at some point the Bible itself says that, and you something like, I'm not sure, but something like, and you the slave be he says something like, and you the slave be respectful to your master. And this, if you look at it, supports that there is a caste system. There is people who are ahead of other people, and you slave be respectful to your master. What does this mean? The Bible itself perpetuated in some point slavery. This is a connotation of Christianity. That's what we're talking about, right? And so Sam Harris argues that the Bible and other religious texts are flawed as moral guides. And he points out that the Bible condones practices like slavery, which modern society universally condones. A question. Harris emphasizes that religious texts are divinely inspired. But we ask our question, what about the morals, such as the abolition of slavery? You need to ask yourself also that question. Now, Jordan Peterson's argument. Jordan Peterson takes not a nuanced approach, arguing that the Bible and other religious texts must be understood within their historical and cultural contexts and contains archetypal wisdom. He suggests that this text reflects the moral evolution of humanity and contains archetypal wisdom that guided societal development, while Peterson acknowledges that the problematic aspects of biblical morality, he contends that religion played a foundational role in shaping moral framework and enabling long-term societal cohesion. For Peterson, the biblical should be interpreted symbolically and as a source of deep psychological insight rather than as literal moral code. Now, I would really like to take people's opinion in regards to this because I most definitely believe that it's usually important for us to, have this discussion, have these talks, because it really plays a vital role in making us understand really what's going on. Now, somebody's saying that giving Christianity the credit for ending slavery is like giving an arsonist the credit for putting out the fire. And I think I started my discussion by talking about this because if Christianity itself ended slavery, the question is, who started slavery? Somebody's also saying that what I learned here is that Peterson invented the weave. Okay? I will never give up on the position that all religions are equal. False. And he quotes this as something that Christopher Hitchens talked about. Somebody's also saying that I love the argument that it was Christians that ended slavery. It's a great way to show you are arguing in a bad faith. Somebody's saying that Jordan is such a joke. He obviously avoids direct questions because you can't defend the Bible with black and white morals and calling out an obvious legitimate rebuttal to its own argument. For example, the Bible is written as a fictional document, doesn't take away from the legitimacy of the argument. Big words and long confusing sentences don't make you right. I love that he admits that he all as his rabble to make his argument is trying to rebuild something that was torn down for very good reasons. Somebody's also saying that these people only defend slavery. Well, if you talk to enough Christians, you'll definitely hear a few who defended slavery. What they usually do is ignore the actual slavery parts and assume that the accommodations offered the Israelites apply to everyone. There is an even smaller amount of people who straight up say that it's fine and it's laid out because it came from God. Don't rule out human stupidity. Somebody said that if Jordan honestly answered a yes or no question, he'd lose his audience. To retain their support, he has to no choice but dodge direct questions or just outright lie. He's dishonest. Weasel. Everyone should move on from. I don't know what you think about this. Just tell me, what do you really think about this? As usually know, these are presented Jintok Stories, and I'm hoping to see you in my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.